if you're somebody that has a hard time setting goals, just change your daily behaviors and you're probably going to get to the same place. If you need a concrete goal hanging out there, great. But that's for nothing if you aren't reverse engineering the process and then putting in the behaviors that'll lead to the goal. And I think at the end of the day, it's kind of the same thing. It's just a different approach.
Exactly. It's just a different way of getting there.
Hello, Suzanne.
Hello, Rick Mayo. How are you?
Hey, that registered when I clapped. Did you see that?
I did.
That's good.
You clap loud.
How are you?
I'm good. Good. Yeah. Busy. Yes, we are busy bees here.
I know. Rumor is we're moving some franchises around here, these parts.
Yeah, I think by the end of next week, we should be at like 240.
Yeah, 240. That's not bad.
Yeah.
Not bad. Well, before we tell everyone what we're really doing today, do you have a dad joke?
I do. So I went to the doctor the other day and I told him that
I'm already laughing.
I broke my arm in two places. And he told me to stop going to those places.
Yeah, that makes sense. Hey, Suzanne, you know why boxers don't have sex before a fight?
Oh, I'm not sure. I have some theories, but
they really just don't like each other that much. Boom.
All right.
Well, hey, here's what we are going to talk about, and it's an interesting topic for us, I think, and it's essentially goal setting. Mm-hmm. Is it necessary? Which might sound really weird coming from a very goal-oriented and I would say relatively high-performing team, right? As we have been for a minute. But is goal setting necessary? And what's the value in it? And this all stems from a conversation that you and I had about this year. I was like, I'm going to sit down this year and I am going to craft and write down my goals this year, right? And I sat down with a friend of mine that does a lot of goal setting and runs workshops around it and everything. And it was like, all right, here's what we're going to do. And I could not come up with any goals. It's the first time, shockingly, maybe to people listening, that I've ever really sat down and said, I'm going to map out specific goals.
And you couldn't do it.
I couldn't do it. I couldn't come up with a goal. And I'll tell you why. And then I did some research as to why, because it made me really self-conscious. It's like, everybody says you have to set goals. So it's like, well, why don't I have any goals, right? I'll give you a real basic example. So let's just take fitness goals as an example, right? I was like, all right, well, there's different pillars in your life and you want to be trying to do your best in each pillar. And one of them is fitness. And okay, I'm do pretty well with that for the most part. But I was like, hey, I'm going to set a fitness goal at least for this year. Yeah. Okay. And so one of the things that I have been, I'd say a little bit slack in executing on is doing interval-based training. That whole Peter Attia, that 1 day a week, get your heart rate really high. And it's just not fun, as you know.
Right.
And I committed to do it on this assault bike is what I had said. I will do that. And because I know that VO2 max is a great predictor of longevity and overall health, and I walk a lot, I get 10,000 steps a day, I lift regularly. I've just been remiss on doing my
metabolic finisher.
Met finisher. I mean, even like doing a separate day, just 1 day a week, suck it up and do it. I have not been doing it, and so I'm like, okay, that's going to be my goal.
Yeah,
but I had a hard time coming up with a concrete goal other than just start going on a Sunday and doing the thing, right? And the person I was talking to is like, well, and I'm like in this case, there's just habits, there's behaviors that need to be done that will lead to a better VO2 max, right? I need to do these behaviors, but I don't know what kind of goal I would set around that. They're like, well, why don't you get your VO2 max measured and then set a goal around that and then go back? I'm like, because I really don't care about my VO2 max, right? And they're like, what do you mean? I'm like, well, I don't care about the specific number. And what I care about is the behavior that's going to increase my VO2 max to whatever level it will based on the behaviors I'm willing to commit to. So I'll go 1 day a week and I'll do the assault bike for 30 minutes. I'll do 3 on 3 off, 6 rounds or 5 rounds, right? And that'll give me my 30 minutes. And that's what I'm going to do. And that will result in a better VO2 max. Like, that's a fact. What that exact number is, I really don't care. Right?
Right.
And you could take that easy example that everyone can understand and extrapolate that out over like a personal life. It's like, well, I want to do these things or I want to do those things. It's like, well, you just do the things, right? Like, and that's always been my take is like, just do the behavior. So as you know, I was in your office yesterday and we were talking about this. And you were like, oh, I have goals in every area of my life.
do.
I'm like, really? I'm like, yeah. I'm like, I don't. I just have behaviors. And so in my effort to sort of validate my lack of goals, I really dug in. I ended up landing on a lot of James Clear's information. He wrote Atomic Habits.
Okay.
And I just pulled out some quotes from him, and I love kick around. I want to hear some of your goals. But he basically says, we don't rise to the level of our goals. We fall to the level of our systems. And I think that's where I stay, is like, well, if there's an outcome that needs to be achieved, the only thing in my control is the behaviors that lead to the outcome. The outcome is not even that important. It's more about the things that move me towards the outcome.
Right.
And I don't know if I'm just playing word games or mind games.
It's semantics, I think.
Is it?
I do think so.
Okay.
And to some extent, I think it is. Because, you have, whether you call them goals or behaviors or whatever, you've got a thing in mind that a place in mind where you want to get to, whether that's, financially or fitness wise or relationally or spiritually or whatever those things are. And then you behave your way to success. And so you can call it a behavior but what you're doing is trying to behave your way to reach the goal or the whatever. I think you're just having a problem with that word.
Well, and I think the problem with the outcome is I don't care what the outcome is, because the outcome is simply a result of the behaviors.
Right.
And I think we talked about yours through the lens of fat loss. So tell me what you told me yesterday. You had a goal originally like of losing 25 pounds.
I did. So last year, about this time, I'm like, okay, I've got to get some of this weight off. So 25 pounds was my goal, and that's measurable. There was an end point, and I based it on 20 years ago when I was probably in the best shape of my life. I could see my abs. It was like, okay,
right.
that was where I wanted to get to, what the scale said. So I did that, and I got to that goal weight, and I get on the InBody, and I'm 20 years older. Things are not where they used to be, and my body composition is different. I mean, whatever you want to say, but the InBody said, no, I have 5 more to go. So I'm like, all right, I'll just keep going. And so I reached that lower goal weight. I'm like,
so you got to 30. And we talked about this.
Yes, I got to 30. Yes. Yeah. I got to the 30 pounds. I still don't look like I did 20 years ago, but I'm just going to have to let that go,
Right.
But I think that for me, that goal was a moving target. And a lot of people would say, well, that's, you don't want to keep changing the goalpost, but I think it's okay to do that. And it depends on, what the situation is. But I sit down every January and I have different categories of my life, and I think about something that I want to achieve. So I call it a goal, and then I behave my way to getting there. So whether that's discipline and, it can be something so simple. Like I think about 10 years ago, my health goal or my fitness goal was I wanted to do an unassisted pull-up, just one. So it can be something super simple like that. Or it could be something more esoteric or hard to measure. Like this year, I said, I want to improve my relationship with my 2 oldest children. They're busy with their lives and their children and their careers. And I miss the closeness that we used to have. And maybe that's not even attainable, because they just might be in a season of their life that they just don't have the bandwidth to do that. Nevertheless, it's a goal. And how do I behave my way to that? Well, I just put in some effort. Maybe that's texting them or calling them once a week or whatever. And maybe it might not work out because I might not.
Well, then, okay. So it sounds like this crazy lofty conversation. I hope people are going to be able to stay with us. But if in fact the goal was to improve, that's not really measurable, right?
It's not.
So it's like, hey, I want to improve my relationship. Okay, so are you going to rank it? Like right now, I would rank up all the factors of a relationship with an adult child. I'm at a 5. I need to move it to an 8. So you're not getting that concrete with that goal, right? What you're saying then is, well, here's the behaviors that I would do that would only result in a stronger relationship or not, but they're the controllables that I have in my purvey. These are the things I'm going to do that would positively affect my relationship with my kids, right?
Right.
And so, again, for me, it goes back to the behaviors. And I pulled as I went down this rabbit hole of why I'm not able to set these goals. It's like, well, there's a famous football coach who was the 3-time Super Bowl winner. His name's Bill Walsh. And a lot of coaches came out from under his umbrella and became great coaches.
Right.
And now they have coaches that have come out of theirs. And he always just said, hey, just do the work. Just do the work necessary. The score takes care of itself. And that's kind of where I fall, is like, well, like we talked about, all right, well, I need to, see my mom more often. Okay, well, am I going to set like a goal of once a month, or am I just going to say, look, I'm going to call my mom once a week, and then whatever pans out from that, it will, right? So I think for me, I probably am goal setting, but I don't start with the goal and then do the behaviors. I just set the goal as the behaviors. I don't care about the outcome. And so then the question would be, then how do you measure whether or not your goals are being met?
So I think in some instances it's easier than others, right? So like weight loss, that's easy. You measure it, you either did it or you didn't. Some of the more higher level things like relationships or spiritual goals or whatever are more hard to measure.
You're Christian, so let's say you're like, hey, I want to improve my spiritual goals. So your goal then would be to read the Bible every day.
Right.
But there's not a measurable.
Right.
But even in business, I mean, it's sort of like the Simon Sinek's idea of infinite games, where the goal is just to keep going.
Right.
And if you keep going, you inevitably will win, whatever that means.
Right.
But within that, there are finite scores that have to be kept. You have to make profit. You have to hit goal, within.
Sure.
And I think that's okay. Even for franchising, it's like, hey, we have a budget for this many. But if we do all the things that we need to do to get to that number and we fell too short, I'm okay with that. I'm more about the behaviors, right? Now, if we do those same behaviors and we exceeded it by 20%, I'm also okay with that.
Which is what we're going to do.
Well, no doubt. I agree. But I don't care so much about the number as I do about the behaviors to get to the number. I think so I've never set a goal, because for me, you know how I oversimplify everything, and there's good and bad things to that. But for me, it's like, look, I need my VO2 max up. Okay, what do I need to do? It's like, we need to do what you are supposed to do. You go to the gym and you on Sunday morning or whatever, and you get on there and you pedal the bike. I don't care what the VO2 max is, because that's the work I'm willing to put in.
I think that, you are an exception to a lot of people. You're not maybe wired like the rest of us. So for you're extremely disciplined in all areas of your life. And so you set these behaviors. And so to you, it's like, I'm just going to do that, and it will take me where it leads me, which are good things. Right. So you don't really waste a lot of time or energy thinking about goal setting. But I think you're an exception. I really do.
So most people in your mind need a hard goal.
I mean,
you think about SMART goals. It's something we all talk about in fitness, is pick an attainable goal, reverse engineer it from here to there, do the behaviors. And I've just never done it. So I felt a little bit embarrassed that I couldn't come up with any goals, because I'm like, well, I'm already doing all the things I need to be doing to get to these places.
That's why I'm saying that you're unusual, because I think most of us probably don't have that level of discipline in every area of our lives. So, I like to just give some thought about, where I am and then where I want to be, and then write those things down in these different categories, whether it's, sometimes it's health. I won't even call it fitness, but fitness kind of is in that category: financial, spiritual, relational, business, all those things. So I want to give it some thought and then set some goals. I'm usually pretty good about reaching my goals when I'm intentional like that, where I'm actually writing them down and kind of really thinking about them.
I think most people are, right? That's the mechanism that we would coach people to, whether in their business or in, like you said, in their fitness journey, whatever that might be, right? Have a tangible goal that's measurable.
Right.
Reverse engineer the behaviors and then move towards that goal.
Right. Yeah. So I think your struggle with it is just because you have been so disciplined in so many areas of your life, which it probably speaks to why you've been so successful in all the different things. So,
let's talk about some other goals, since it's a foreign
thing. So like one of my goals always is to look at, have a financial goal. So a number of years ago, my financial goal was to be completely debt free. Mortgage and all. By the time a certain event took place, and that was when my alimony was going to be running out, and it was going to be over. And this probably happened about 8 years ago. So I wanted to be completely debt-free, and I worked very hard and was very intentional about paying down that mortgage. I didn't really have a lot of other debt.
Right.
So it was just the mortgage thing. And I got there and man, it feels good. So financial is always a good, and that's a pretty easy thing, whether that's get out of debt or pay down your credit cards or pay off your student loans or, whatever. That's a pretty easy thing. This year, my financial goal is to start planning for the future because I'm going to retire someday. We might have an event someday. I don't know. I don't know what that looks like, but I need to just have a person or people in place that can help me navigate those things and kind of plan for those. So you can always think of something. Relational goals, those vary from year to year. This year, it's just to kind of work on it with my 2 oldest kids. Health or fitness goals. This year, it's to maintain the weight loss and to get more of my my level 2 steps in. Walk my dog more. I definitely
get more
need
low-level movement
to
in. Yep.
up that. And that's not a hard thing to do. For me, it's more like a time thing because it should be like 2 to 3 hours a week.
Yeah.
And you would think that doesn't sound like very much time, like Suzanne, really, but maybe it's just hard. I'm just busy, and it's just hard to carve out that time. And it's winter, and it gets dark at 5:30, and all those things. I think it's easier when it stays light longer, and after work, I can take my dog and go out for a while. But so those are the different categories: spiritual, financial. Spiritual, it's like I would need to pray more,
right?
And work on the gratitude thing. I think that is a really, really helpful practice or behavior, is to just do that gratitude exercise every day.
It's hard to be cynical and grateful at the same time, right?
Yes.
You can't hold both thoughts.
Right.
So I think it is obviously we have like branded 5-minute journals, which is a gratitude journal.
Yep.
I've got the app on my phone. I do that regularly. But again, I never set a goal around it. I just do the thing. It's weird.
But again, you're so disciplined, and most people would be like, oh, wow, okay, I never even thought about doing that. So I think just going through the exercise of the different areas, then you have already implemented so many behaviors on in those different things that it's not an issue for you. Like, you don't need to sit down and set goals because you just are wired that way.
Having it, and I felt like a duh moment where it's like, well, what about this? And literally my response was, well, duh.
Right.
I mean, just do the thing, and I know that's, again, that oversimplification, but that's the way I operate, so I couldn't come up with any goals. And I thought, well, then how am I going to know if I'm making any progress or not? And it went back to the podcast we did on the book, The Gap in the Gain.
I was going to say, live in the gain.
If you live in the gain, you're always like, you can look back and say, oh, well, I've done all these behaviors. I've come a long way, right? It isn't necessarily about the goal. You mentioned earlier the goalpost moving once you reach your goals. I've found that as well. It's like we set a goal. I'm like, what's the point? There are measurables in a business that need to happen. Let's say it's a business goal. But every time we've reached a goal in a business, I think that we did the work. Of course, we reached the goal. You just don't quit, right? You just keep going and you'll eventually get where you're supposed to go. And it might be a different goal than maybe you originally, but the goal is the aim is to set a goal and then move in that direction. And you may end up exactly at that goal, or the goalpost may move back or whatever. And
Often.
I find that just like the behaviors themselves and using the gap in the gain, you can always look backwards to measure if you've made progress in any of those sort of pillars in your life, right? Have I made any progress? It's like, well, yes, I have. So yeah, it was just an interesting conversation. And the person I was talking to was just like, okay, you don't have any goals? I'm like, I've never set goals. Like, if I'm honest, I've never set a goal. I just do things. But those things lead me to where I'm supposed to be.
But I think you are, just not intentionally. I mean, because your behaviors and you're disciplined, and just the way you're wired, you're setting up systems, you're, setting up certain disciplines for yourself that you do that naturally. And so to you, it's not like, well, I'm not sitting down and writing down goals, but you're still behaving in that way that it's going to get you where you want to be.
Right.
Without writing down the goal. So it's just, It's just behavior, discipline.
So for you, I think you would write down the goal and then you would reverse engineer the behaviors to reach the goal, which is more usual, right?
Yeah.
And for me, I just do the behaviors only, and the goal, like I end up where I end up based on really good behaviors.
Well, and I think that's just a brain thing, how you're wired. And, you and I have very different skill sets. Luckily, they are are good matching opposite skill sets. So for me, like for business goals, I have to set these incremental goals so that I get to where I need to be by the deadline. And I'm not a procrastinator. I wouldn't be able to sleep at night if I waited until 2 weeks before. Then, you're working fast and furiously.
We talked about FDD update, and you have these like deadlines for each.
Artificial deadlines for myself.
So that we get there early. And I'm not going through these sleepless nights of panicking because I'm not where I need to be. So for me, it's a way to calm my life down and be on my schedule. It's not anybody else's schedule. It's just my schedule, so that I have to get this done by this date and this done by that date, and all of these things have to fall into place, and then I will be able to deliver the new FDD 3 weeks a month early, which is going to help us with registration renewals and all that. Yeah. And as I was thinking about that conversation that we had yesterday, like part of that is like you and I, to your point, we're different and we have vastly different roles.
Yes.
Like my roles are more, I make way fewer decisions and do way less stuff, but each one of those decisions can be way more impactful, right?
Yes.
Whereas you are, operations 100%. Yeah. So like, whether you're having to do it or having other people do it, there have to be deadlines in that. Whereas I don't have that necessarily. Right. It's just like I'm looking at the general direction of the business.
Yep.
Right. Somebody has to climb up the tree every now and then and be like, okay, we going in the same, are we going in the right direction? I have to see above the forest every now and then, right?
Yeah.
But somebody has to chop the trees and keep moving, right? Which is kind of what you're doing. So maybe that even the business side is like we just have different roles.
Well, and I think also that speaks to our personalities. Like we get along really well, but we just have way different ways our minds work in different ways.
Right.
And so even though we can laugh together and get each other's sense of humor and stuff like that, my mind works in a completely different way than your mind works.
Right.
And that's great. That makes us great partners.
Well, I think for anyone listening, like if you are more of a visionary, right, which is maybe more my role versus someone who's like more operations, which Suzanne is the integrator. She makes all the ideas come to fruition and come to life and actually work. The idea would be like, you can go with the Atomic Habits idea and just change behaviors. Mm-hmm. And they're going to lead you in the same direction. Mm-hmm. Or you can choose a goal and then reverse engineer the behaviors. Mm-hmm. And you're kind of doing the same thing at the end of the day. But maybe if anyone's listening that isn't a hard goal setter like me, because I felt a little bit of shame around it. Like, why can't I set goals? Like, what's wrong with me? Am I not motivated? And it's like, no, I'm very motivated. Like all the pillars in my life are doing really well, seemingly. So I'm like, well, not bad. So like whatever MO that I'm operating under, it's working, right? It's just a different lens. And so if you're somebody that has a hard time setting goals, just change your daily behaviors and you're probably going to get to the same place. If you need a concrete goal hanging out there, great. But that's for nothing if you aren't reverse engineering the process and then putting in the behaviors that'll lead to the goal. And I think at the end of the day, it's kind of the same thing. It's just a different approach.
Exactly. It's just a different way of getting there. It's just a different thought process, a different approach, but we're doing the same things. Yeah,
because all those pillars are very important to me as well. And I just look at those, because it was a good exercise to go through. First of all, it was shocking that I couldn't come up with any goals. And the person's just like, well, I don't know, have that measured. I'm like, I don't really care to have it measured. Like, it doesn't even matter to me. I just do. Like, I'm not going to change the behaviors. So why would I care? Like, if those behaviors don't lead to some, random outcome that I just picked out of thin air, like, it doesn't matter. Right. And it's like, oh, I guess you're right. And then they said the same thing. They're just like, you're just weird. You're just not wired the same way. I'm like, I know. And I'm not saying it's better. It just works for me. And if goal setting works for you, do it. And so this certainly isn't something to say, don't set goals. I think it just depends on who you are. But at the end of the day, you have to do the behaviors, whether you start with the goal and reverse engineer or just do the behaviors and you get where you're going to get. Right. Is that fair to say, I think?
Totally. Yeah. It's totally up to the person. You're just set the behaviors and then you'll either accomplish your goal or you'll accomplish
a goal. You're moving in the right direction. A vision. But, and to the credit of maybe the people that are having a hard time setting goals, if your behaviors don't lead to a desired outcome down the road that you want, you need to then change your behaviors. Like,
right.
And I do that all the time. I'm like, all right, well, I tried that. It didn't lead to any improvements in these areas. So I need a different strategy. I don't need a different goal.
Right.
Right. I just need a different strategy.
Oh, yeah. It reminds me of this story. My nephew, who is in his late 30s, he was in his late 30s at the time. And he's like, I really want to meet a nice girl and settle down and get married. But he's living in Manhattan, New York, working for, big Wall Street thing. And he's dating 20-year-old supermodels. I'm like, okay, well, you're not going to get to your goal unless you change your behavior. You have to behave your way to success. So if you're dating 19-year-old supermodels because they're, hot and smoking and whatever, you're not going to meet the nice girl that you want to marry because that 19-year-old supermodel isn't ready to get married yet. So,
she's got a career and lots of choices ahead of her.
You can't say this on the one hand, but then do this and expect to get this. You have to behave your way to success.
Yeah.
He's like, huh.
See, to me, I'm like, well, duh. I mean, we have a common friend who won't be named, but he didn't get married till he was 50. And we used to have the same conversation. He's in his 40s. He's dating girls in their 20s. He's like, I don't know, man. I just want to settle down. I'm like, your behavior speaks nothing to settling down. You're literally moving from one unmarriable person to the other, right? Like, and just basing it on one thing and one thing only, which is how hot is this individual? It's like, that is not the recipe for long-term success.
Right.
Maybe. And then when he changed his MO, he met somebody amazing and got married, and they've been happily married ever since. It's like, okay, well, it's a behavior thing then, right?
Yep.
For me. But if the goal was I want to get married, it's like, well, then, again, you're not the person you're looking for is looking for kind of idea, right? Mm-hmm. So anyway, I hope this helps. I know it's kind of a lofty conversation, but it was just shocking to me that I couldn't come up with the goals. I felt really bad about it. So I did research to back it up. And I think 6, 1/2 dozen of the other, we kind of end up in the same place. So if you're like me, don't beat yourself up. Just keep changing behaviors and you're going to move in the right direction. If you're not getting the outcomes, change behaviors again. If you're more like Suzanne, set a hard goal, reverse engineer the behaviors, and the goalpost may change, but you'll be pretty darn close. And ultimately, you guys, it's about aiming as high as you can and creating a life and behaviors that will move you in that direction. Right. And if you bring everything you have to bear, all the skills and effort that you can, your life is going to be far better.
You're going to be living the best version of yourself. You're going to be living your best life. So either way, it's a win.
Yep. Cool.
Whichever way you get there.
All right. Well, that's probably the strangest podcast we've done. But I really hope it helped. And thanks for divulging all of your personal goals
you're welcome.
and your weight loss goals.
You're welcome.
We'll talk to you guys next time.
All right. Bye, guys. Thanks.